there she is again, George's most loyal companion in his writing process. Whenever he is under pressure to be creative, reach a deadline, or, God forbid, change a chapter, she is right by his side. Today, she is sitting on his lap, staring into his eyes. Her cold hands cradle his head and press so hard that his brain nearly drips out of his ears. She is his stalker. She is his nemesis. She is his writer's block. He wasn't planning on killing Chris, but the fear on Emily's face is burned on his retina and into his mind. He thinks only about his grandma and her horrifying nightmares, and he is unable to find solutions to make them stop. She wants Chris dead. Drastic! Killing a child hero is not only morally questionable, but will mean the end of his book contract as well. Who wants to read their kids a bedtime story about a boy who dies? He wonders why he's even contemplating this. All this drama because of a stupid nightmare. Because what else could it be? An old woman who is sliding into dementia and has had a few scary dreams about the stories she heard. Nothing strange about that. But somehow, George cannot see it that way. Not when the old woman is the great Emily Cherith. Not after holding her dehydrated hand. And not after seeing the deep bite mark on her leg. At the same time, George kicks himself for even considering those stories might be more than dreams. They're not. They can be. Should he change the story in such a way that Chris has no power over any of the elements of nature anymore? But that's the core of the book's purpose. Also, there's his publisher's contract to finish a children's book. To top it off, his agent is chasing him for the final chapter. Too many factors to consider. Too many people to please. Too much pressure. The only thing he must do, the only thing that could make this go away, is to write. But his writer's block is still squeezing the creative fluids out of his brain. She now fuses her icy lips to his and begins to suck the breath out of his lungs. George's phone rings and he gasps for air. The sound of Sai's greeting reopens his airway. Who knows how long he had stopped breathing? I might have been a little too harsh on you yesterday. I'm sorry, she says. No. I mean, don't worry, I understand. While he stumbles through his sentences, George hates himself for not simply agreeing with her. She did accuse him of outrageous things. He should be offended. For a moment, he entertains the thought of hanging up on her. How cool would that be? He'd make a proper statement, like heroes and villains in a film. Except that none of those heroes or villains' last words before hanging up are ever, "Don't worry, I understand." Despite his fantasy of being a man nobody messes with, he doesn't really want to hang up anyway. After all, it is Sai. "How's the cleaning brigade doing?" he asks. Everything has returned to normal, except for a lingering whiff of garbage now and then. Your grandmother and the other residents are back in their own section. My God, thank God. Good. Sai? Yeah? She says encouragingly after a longer than natural pause. Grandma thinks it's because of the stories in my book. He closes his eyes, knowing how stupid this must sound. She might be right, she says. She what? She told me that the dramas at night were based on the stories you read to her. Is that the case? Yes, that's correct. Well then, they must have caused it, right? Well, maybe. I mean, Personally, I think, this is my personal opinion, that I guess what I mean is I don't understand how fictional story elements can come to life in reality. But like you say, there might be more between heaven and earth. Who knows what's possible on a spiritual... Excuse me, I never said that. No, silly. Sorry, I mean George. There's obviously no way the stories play out in actual life. They just cause your grandmother bad dreams, that's all. Of course. No, that is, of course, what I mean as well. Coming to life in her dreams, not in the physical world. How would that work? Crazy, right? George wants to disappear into some other spiritual realm himself. While heavy droplets of sweat crawl down his flushed face, he hears Sai say, "Look, the only thing that matters is to stop Mrs. Jarrett's nightmares. If the stories from your book trigger them..." "I know," George says with a sigh. "I have to kill the protagonist, don't I?" "What? No! Are you George's ego sinks even deeper into the quicksand of mortification. "Your protagonist is a fictional character. Of course you don't have to kill him. Or her." "Him," George says in an apathic voice. "Don't kill him. Just stop reading the stories to your grandmother." Granny is convinced the events are real and that they keep happening as long as Chris, that's the boy from the novel, continues his adventures in my book. Try to understand, Sai. She is a stubborn woman. As long as she's living in a rememorite, she'll want me to kill the boy. Remember what? It's an inside joke. We call her bright moments rememorites. Why don't you write an alternative ending just for Mrs. Jarrett's sake? Whatever it takes to make her think the boy can't harm her anymore. She'll be happy and her nightmares will stop. She doesn't have to know it's not the real ending of your book. So simple, so perfect, so Sai. A readership of one is far less intimidating, even if Emily's opinion means the world to George. The only thing he needs to do is write a fake story about the demise of Chris. He doesn't have to bother his agent about it. Hell, it doesn't even have to be that well written, as long as the boy dies in Emily's mind. Without knowing it, Sai has released George from his writer's block. This should be easy. Kill Chris.